Burmese pythons are creatures called the most destructive foreign threat to Florida. But what if we told you that people have brought an even bigger invasive threat to the struggling state? Right now, because of this creature, the populations of 2 crab species have dropped to just 1% of what they were before the invasive threat arrived in Florida. On top of that, scientists note that the introduced species has caused a significant decline in the density of local fish. People in Florida aren't safe either. This invasive creature can pass a parasite to humans that moves under the skin, causing bumps, itching, swelling, and tissue damage almost anywhere in the body, including the liver, lungs, and stomach. And you know what else? This invasive threat can breathe both in water and on land and handle different levels of salinity, letting it spread to almost any area. Basically, the problems this species is causing now are just the beginning. So what's the creature gradually becoming a disaster for Florida? Let's find out today. Actually, the new threat to Florida is way more dangerous than not just Burmese pythons, but also other species brought into the state. And there are really a lot of them, all of which are a real danger to Florida's nature. Take, for example, the Nile monitor, an animal that, as you can tell from its name, came to Florida from Africa. The reason for their arrival in the U.S. is pretty simple. At some point, people decided that the Nile monitor made a perfect exotic pet. And then, well, of course, the reptiles started ending up in the wild. Their olive or grayish skin, marked with distinctive rows of yellow spots, blends perfectly into the foliage. And their aquatic skills let them move easily through Florida's countless canals and swamps. In the absence of natural predators, their population began to grow rapidly, spreading across vast areas including Palm Beach and Miami-Dade counties where they thrive. Is this really a big threat to Florida? Yes, definitely. Because we're dealing with creatures that have a diet very dangerous to local wildlife. Nile monitors hunt indiscriminately, going after anything from small mammals and fish to frogs and birds, yet their true destructive power shows itself in the destruction of egg clutches. Nile monitors have become a real nightmare for vulnerable species, raiding the nests of local alligators, American crocodiles, as well as birds and sea turtles, putting these rare populations at risk. On top of that, these lizards eat insects, crustaceans, and mollusks. Overall, they're truly omnivorous creatures, and because of this, they reduce the numbers of local animals both directly by eating them and indirectly by consuming the creatures that certain species rely on for food. So far, Nile monitors aren't seen as a disaster for Florida's nature, but they are reportedly spreading fast, so the consequences could be very grim down the line. Now take a look at this. It's hard to imagine that this seemingly harmless creature could become a real menace for an entire state, but that's exactly what happened with giant African snails in Florida. These mollusks, brought into the state through the exotic pet trade, found perfect conditions for breeding in the tropical climate and turned into an unstoppable force. They first appeared in the 1960s, starting the initial wave of invasion, which was only brought under control 10 years later at enormous effort. But in 2011, they came back to deliver an even more destructive blow. Then, after a long fight, ecologists declared victory over the invasive species again in 2021. And for a while, no one spotted a single snail in the wild. But then 2022 came, and the snail was found in Florida once more. As big as a rat, these snails aren't just an exotic species, they're a living symbol of destruction. They're incredibly voracious and can devour over 500 types of plants, including crops critical for agriculture. This puts Florida's thriving farming industry at risk. But their appetite doesn't stop there. They need calcium to grow their shells, and they get it by mercilessly nibbling on plaster and paint from residential houses. The real danger of these mollusks, however, lies in the fact that they carry a dangerous parasite, the rat lungworm, which can cause meningitis in humans and pets. This makes them not just an ecological threat, but a serious public health problem. And considering that snails can lay up to 1,200 eggs a year, their spread can be incredibly fast, requiring constant and decisive action. And finally, here's another type of invasive snake in Florida, which isn't as dangerous as today's main stars. These are boas, which seemed perfect as pets, but as usually happens in Florida, ended up in the wild. They're non-venomous, yet still formidable predators because of their amazing strength. Boas can grow several feet long, and their muscular bodies with a distinctive pattern of dark spots make them perfect hunting machines. They like to live quietly, letting them quietly adjust to new environments. Given Florida's warm, humid climate and plenty of potential prey, their populations have started to thrive, forming stable colonies especially in the southern part of the state. The ecological harm that boas bring comes from their being universal predators. They don't focus on a single type of prey, but go after a variety of local animals. Their menu includes small mammals like rodents, along with birds and other reptiles. In environments where local wildlife isn't used to facing such strong, big predators, common boas add extra strain to already fragile populations, disrupting the natural food chain. Just imagine. All these species aren't nearly as dangerous as the Asian swamp eel or Monopterus albus. No, it's not just another snake sharing Florida with pythons and boas, and it's not even a real eel, but a fish that belongs to the Synbranchidae family. As we already said, this eel ended up in the U.S., in Florida to be exact, because of people. Now let's get more specific. This strange-looking fish was brought in for food, sold in specialty shops and markets, and then, well, the usual story. In 1997, the swamp eel was spotted in several lakes far apart from each other, which made it clear it had started spreading in the wild, a destructive spread. The eel's main weapon is its insatiable appetite and ruthless predatory nature, which threaten the local food chain, changing it day by day. The eel, swiftly gliding along the bottom of water bodies, is a greedy generalist predator, able to adjust its diet to any prey it can catch. Its flexible, muscular body lets it squeeze into the narrowest cracks and thickets where it relentlessly hunts anything that moves. As an example, the populations of 2 crayfish species have dropped to just 1% of their original numbers: the slough crayfish and the Everglades crayfish. These creatures are food for many animals, including fish like the largemouth bass and the warmouth. Among birds, that includes ibises and the American bittern. On top of that, the local Florida green water snake mostly feeds on crayfish, and raccoons as well as certain turtle species may add these clawed critters to their diet when needed. The eel doesn't stop there. Its menu includes local fry, small fish, tadpoles, frogs, as well as crustaceans and other invertebrates. Like a ruthless eating machine, it methodically sweeps through territories, leaving behind empty niches that once teemed with life. What's the problem here? The insatiable eel reduces the numbers of local species both directly, by eating them, and indirectly. Predators lose their prey, leading to situations where they die from lack of food. And predators can also be small and defenseless, so the eel can shrink their populations directly as well. The serious danger of this new invasive species comes from the fact that the Asian swamp eel is a strange kind of fish, not just because of how it looks, but because it can survive in the harshest conditions. While most fish are destined to die if their habitat dries up or gets contaminated, this species can abandon its familiar environment and embark on a hazardous journey across land. Its serpent-like body enables it to slither and glide over damp earth, moving from one pond to another, as if on an invisible bridge closed off to native species, which remain confined to their own waters. This remarkable resilience comes from a complex physiology that gives the eel a clear advantage over competitors. Unlike native fish whose gills function only in water, the eel can breathe air using a special organ located in its mouth cavity. At the same time, this adaptation allows the eel not just to survive in marshy places with very little oxygen, but also to spread into muddy, stagnant waters that can sustain only a handful of species. An eel's knack for surviving in harsh conditions makes it practically immune to the natural forces that normally control wildlife populations, and that's just one side of its dangerous nature. There's another, more hidden and insidious threat. Lying in its behavior, this species has a unique ability to burrow deep into the mud and banks of waterways to outlast tough times, especially drought. This seemingly harmless behavior turns into a powerful tool of destruction that slowly but relentlessly undermines the integrity of Florida's entire water system, affecting both its hydrology and infrastructure. Underground tunnels hidden from the surface slowly weaken the structure of the shoreline and levees, which play a crucial role in managing the state's water resources. In areas where eel populations are high, the soil becomes unstable, which can lead to collapsing banks. Eventually, this underground activity creates biological holes in the hydrological system, which during heavy rains or hurricanes can cause serious washouts and even damage important water structures. This environmental change also has other long-term effects. Bank erosion increases, altering the depth and flow of water bodies. The water becomes murky, reducing sunlight reaching the bottom and negatively affecting the growth of aquatic plants, which serve as food and shelter for many local species. As a result, this hidden activity of the eel isn't just an environmental risk, but a threat to the entire state's infrastructure. The problem is that the damage builds up slowly and goes unnoticed until it shows up as a collapsed shoreline or a disrupted canal. At that point, it's clear that in the long run, the Asian swamp eel is more dangerous for Florida than the Burmese python, which at least doesn't cause infrastructure problems. Another factor in the story of the unstoppable spread of the Asian swamp eel is the near total lack of natural enemies in its new environment. Unlike in its native Asia, where eel populations are kept in check by large predators, in Florida it's become the undisputed master, with no need to fear attacks. Its slippery snake-like body, ability to hide in the mud, and behavior unlike that of local creatures make it an incredibly tough target for alligators, swamp birds, and fish that might try to eat it. And finally, it should be said that the Asian swamp eel is a creature with an amazing ability to adapt thanks to its unique reproductive traits. First of all, the Asian swamp eel is a hermaphrodite. All its babies are female, and as they grow, some of them develop a male phenotype. At the same time, males can switch sexes, which allows them to boost the population when it's in trouble. Spawning can happen all year round, and a single female can produce up to 1,000 eggs at a time. Overall, these are creatures that can reproduce both massively and under tough conditions. As we've already mentioned, the eel was first spotted in Florida back in 1997, when the creature was living in canals in Miami-Dade County. A little later, it was found in the neighboring Broward County, as well as around Tampa. Until 2014, the population covered an area of about 23 square miles, and then it spread along the Gulf Coast into central Florida and southward, taking over an area of more than 4,300 square miles. This isn't just simple growth, it's an expansion of Florida's territory in geometric progression. Today, the swamp eel can be found in canals, ponds, rivers, and even drying up swampy puddles. It's already made its way into the Alafia River and Little Manatee River, as well as dozens of other locations. The eel's range has expanded by another 2,240 square miles in recent years, and that's just the official data collected by biologists. In reality, it could be lurking in far more bodies of water because, as we've learned today, this fish is great at sneaking under shores or burrowing into mud. And the main thing, this story isn't over, and there's no end in sight. Florida is literally packed with canals and drainage channels that humans built to manage swamps and hurricane rains. For the eel, these are free highways leading to new territories, and every new stretch is another foothold for hunting and breeding. Scientists put it straight. The eel's range will keep expanding. The creature's already proven it can survive in swamps that dry up for half a year and in water where other fish die from lack of oxygen. That means the path is open for it to move into other parts of Florida, and if things go in the creature's favor, even beyond the state. And if it seems like only nature's in danger, that's not true. In fact, human health is also at risk because of the spread of this snake-like fish. The thing is, this invasive species carries invisible but extremely dangerous passengers. Two types of parasitic worms, the rat lungworm or Angiostrongylus and nematodes of the genus Gnathostoma, which turn the eel into a living source of a potential outbreak. Unlike ecological impacts, this threat targets humans directly, and it manifests in two entirely different forms. The Asian swamp eel, spreading into new areas, picks up parasites when it eats snails, frogs, and fish, the intermediate hosts of these worms. But the cycle doesn't stop there. The eel turns into a living reservoir, and if its meat ends up on a person's plate, undercooked or raw, the larvae get a chance to move into a new host, a human. The first and most well-known threat comes from rat lungworm, whose larvae, once they enter the human body, travel to the central nervous system. This process triggers eosinophilic meningitis, a serious illness with symptoms showing up as excruciating, unbearable headaches, stiff neck muscles, nausea, and vomiting. In particularly severe cases, when the inflammation spreads, it can lead to major neurological problems. A person might survive the illness, but the effects can be permanent, leaving a lasting mark on their health. The second danger, posed by nematodes of the Gnathostoma genus, show up in a different but no less worrying way. These parasites, once inside the body, trigger gnathostomiasis, a disease known for its wandering nature. The larvae travel under the skin, producing periodic painful lumps and swelling that can show up anywhere on the body. Though not always deadly, the condition can drag on for months or even years, causing ongoing suffering. In rare instances, the larva may reach the eyes, resulting in blindness, or the brain, leading to severe complications like those caused by lungworms. In response to the rapid spread of the Asian swamp eel, which threatens not just the environment but also human health, Florida authorities have launched an active fight. Realizing that completely eradicating this elusive and resilient predator is practically impossible, the Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission, or FWC, acts on the principle of don't let it take hold in new waters. This organization keeps a daily watch, sets traps, collects data on new sightings, and turns every tip from residents into concrete action, like moving pieces on a chessboard. The scientific backing for this work comes from the USGS, or U.S. Geological Survey, as well as research centers across the state. They test the water for eel DNA, map out possible spread routes, and study the ecological impacts. Thanks to this, scientists can predict where the eel might show up next and advise the FWC on where to step up monitoring. In this way, the bodies of water become a living map, where every drop can tell the story of the predator's movements. FWC also actively involves state residents. Through a hotline and online forums, anyone can report an eel sighting. The local community becomes extra eyes and ears for science. The more people join in, the faster they can respond to new hotspots and prevent the eel from taking hold where it hasn't appeared yet. Awareness raising is also part of the effort. People learn why releasing exotic fish into the wild is a bad idea, and how even small, careless actions can help an invasive species spread. The campaign reminds everyone that eels can survive in the harshest conditions, moving into places other species can't reach, and that protecting the ecosystem requires mindful actions from each person. Direct efforts to eliminate the eel are carried out selectively, but scientific monitoring helps minimize the impact of the fish's presence. Studying habitats using traps, DNA analysis, and engaging with local communities create a system where every move of the eel is tracked, examined, and predicted. This doesn't promise a quick victory, but it gives the ecosystem a chance to withstand this secretive and highly adaptable invasive species. Maybe Florida could learn from many Asian countries where people have lived alongside eels for centuries without worry. First, it should be said that in their native habitat, among the sun-drenched rice fields and winding streams of South and East Asia, the Asian swamp eel isn't a threat, but a natural and integral part of a complex ecosystem. Its presence there isn't a sign of imbalance, but the result of centuries of harmony, where every species has its place. This species, despite its resilience, doesn't have the ability to dominate other inhabitants since its population is kept in check by numerous natural enemies. Herons, snakes, and larger predators actively hunt it, keeping the eel's numbers under strict control and ensuring the stability of the entire aquatic community. Here, the eel acts not as an invader, but as a regular link in the food chain, functioning in harmony with its surroundings. However, its role isn't limited to just nature. Humans are also a key factor in determining the eel's place in the ecosystem. Locals who've lived alongside this species for centuries have turned it into a valuable resource. In many villages and towns, the Asian swamp eel is a popular product that regularly makes its way to local markets. It's prized for its rich flavor and nutritious qualities, and it's prepared in all sorts of ways. From hearty soups that warm you on chilly evenings to spicy dishes and fancy culinary delicacies served in restaurants. For instance, in China in 2022, they produced a whopping 334,000 tons of eel. Yes, unlike in Florida, here it's farmed intentionally because it's a product loved by many people across the country. By the way, one should point out Hubei province, which would probably be a nightmare for Florida's environmentalists. As of 2022, about 46% of all swamp eels were raised there. This tireless yet traditional practice serves as an effective population control, keeping it in balance with the environment. Local fishermen who set special traps in streams and canals or use clay pots to catch fish not only earn an income, but also take part in a process that maintains this balance. Can this work in Florida? Well, Asian swamp eels were originally brought in for food, but that doesn't mean breeding them could really become a big thing in the state. After all, in Asia, no one worries if 1, 2, or even 100 escape into the wild because the eel is native there. But in Florida? Anyway, today we already saw what happened in Florida when this snake-like fish got loose. Hardly anyone would want more than that, so all that's left is to control the population, reduce it when possible, and maybe carefully cook some to eat, since the invasive species is still perfectly edible.